So, good morning. I'd like to try to tell it like it is whenever I can. So, let me speak about the bride of Christ. Okay, the bride of Christ. If we look in Gnostic Gospels, like the Gnostic Gospel of Christ, we find that there's a figure called Sophia. Sophia is wisdom. Gnosticism has to do with wisdom and knowledge. And knowledge comes from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. Gnosticism was basically Satan. It came from Babylon. Zoroasterism. Zoroasterism is this pushing force. So when I look at the bride of Christ, to me, it's a picture of Sophia, the bride of Christ, in Jewish Gnosticism. Yes, Jewish Gnosticism. You didn't know that Gnosticism was Jewish? Well, Gnosis knowledge is a Greek interpretation. But the Jews practiced Gnosis. They practiced Gnosticism. They picked it up from Babylon or wherever they picked it up from. But the Kabbalah, okay, that the Jewish people were into at that time was a following of Sophia. It was like finding the wisdom and the knowledge, the mystical things, aeons. And so here we're looking at millennialism, which came from Zoroasterism. So it came from these 12 periods of time that you could call them a millennium. They were more than a millennium, but the idea of millennialism comes from this idea of Zoroasterism. So when I look at the book of Revelations, which was a disputed book, let me repeat that. The early fathers disputed the book of Revelation. And I see that there's a couple of verses in that book that was disputed and put in the back of the Bible because we're not to really put too much weight on it. And in that disputed book, somebody sees this idea of a millennial kingdom. And when I see the idea that there was the idea of millennialism in Zoroasterism, which wound up in Jewish Gnosticism, in the gospel, the gospel of Christ, in that Nag Hammadi, that had to do with Sophia being the bride of Christ. When these things are in history, and somebody tells me, "Oh, the bride of Christ is different than the church, and the church is different," and I see all these passages that show that first of all, it doesn't fit completely, because I watched somebody come up with all these passages that showed that there was one kingdom. And that there was two views. There was millennialism in the beginning and amillennialism in the beginning, premillennialism. So what was going on here? Well, there were Gnostic ideas coming in about this millennial kingdom because they were looking for a kingdom. You see, Christ was this big figure, and it looks to me like it had to fit in with their Gnosticism. And if there wasn't a 1,000-year reign of a kingdom where you could show off your good works and how you can, by self-asceticism, reach illumination, Illuminati, like Lucifer, light, the devil, knowledge, the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So when you look at this idea of Sophia and Gnosis and say, and if you really have to read this, it seems that Sophia is the mother of our God. Okay, mother of Jesus, and Sophia, by wisdom, the world was brought about. We read about this stuff in Solomon's book. Who knows where Solomon got it? He had all these different wives. But besides the point, this idea of wisdom is Sophia. Sophia comes from the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. There was always there were people who were changing the Bible and making a lie, even way back before Christ. And that lie was that actually the mother of God is wisdom, is the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. And so which gospel was the correct one? Well, let's weigh them out. By wisdom and knowledge you can reach God. So what did God show us? He showed us that nobody can reach God by wisdom and knowledge, that you're all running after perfection and can't get there. But this is what they teach. And they also teach that you can be illuminated and wind up in these chakras or wind up in the seventh heaven. And whoa, we can reach perfection and reach heaven by our own illumination, our own gnosis. Well, that was the fruit that they ate of, and what they were doing was they were having it makes sense that it's counter to the truth that the reason why you have the law is so I can show you that you can in no way possible reach there without the blood of Jesus Christ. So now the gospel of Jesus Christ has to change somehow into the law. How do we do it? We add Gnosticism to it. Is there proof of this in history? Yeah. Read the Gospel of Thomas. You know, read all the Apocrypha. Look at who Cerinthus was, how he opposed John, and you can take a look at Revelation and go, well, wait a minute, who wrote this? Somebody who had Christian ideas mixed with Gnosticism? Very possible, because the book was disputed by the early church. Oh no, we accepted, nothing's disputed. No, it was disputed, big time. It was the most disputed book there was, pretty much. So to get your whole idea, and really all your other scriptures that are based on millennialism are all straw men compared to the one in Revelation that says that there's a millennial kingdom. Many people are saying that it's just this symbolism for the one kingdom. This is what the amillennialists believe, that those verses in Revelations were referring to that. I don't agree with that. I believe that the verses in Revelation absolutely were talking about a kingdom because they came from Gnosticism. And I believe also that the bride of Christ is a picture of Sophia. Now, who knows? But you see, I have historical proof that there was a woman called Sophia, which was knowledge, which was the opposite of the fruit of grace, the fruit of the tree of life, grace. Knowledge, telling people that she was the mother and that she was the bride of Christ. So when you come to gnosis, when you come to wisdom, you are the Jewish bride of Christ, and you will reign in the millennial kingdom. That's the lie of Gnosticism. Nobody can get to heaven by their own knowledge or power to follow laws. This is Jewish asceticism, came from the sect of the Pharisees, Ebionites. It's possible that James was one of them. Looks very much like it. And Cerinthus. So we had Ebionites in the early church who were preaching this stuff. It's as simple as that. There was always Paul, who everybody hated because he preached grace. He preached the fruit of the tree of life. And they didn't want that. They wanted to preach the tree of knowledge. Truth. Thank you.